Magali Urbina desperately calls out to a group of migrants crossing the Rio Grande.
No los exponga los niños.
The group from Colombia and Honduras struggles their way across the river, losing some of their belongings along the way, but closely clutching the 2 children with them.
The buoys, they haven't stopped anyone. As you can see, there's a group coming through right now.
State troopers helped the migrant group get to safety and treated them for dehydration before taking them into custody. But on Thursday, 2 bodies were discovered in this remote and shallow stretch of the Rio Grande. The body of the first migrant, a 20-year-old from Honduras, was found by Texas troopers tangled in the controversial barrier buoys which stretch roughly the length of 3 soccer fields. Later, Mexican authorities found another body 3 miles upstream. Investigators are trying to find out what led to their deaths. Mexican officials blame them on the floating barrier. Yet a spokesperson for Texas Governor Greg Abbott disagrees, saying the Mexican government is flat out wrong. To be clear, preliminary information points to the first drowning occurring before the body was even near the barriers. The floating barriers are part of Governor Abbott's $5 billion border security plan. Abbott has also been busing thousands of migrants to Democrat-led cities.
I thought President Biden would send me a thank you note for what Texas is doing to secure the border.
You see these buoys? They're part of a floating barrier that was deployed along the Rio Grande at the Texas-Mexico border. Texas' decision to install them has gotten the attention of the Department of Justice, which took legal action against the state this week, saying the barrier violates federal law. So what exactly is this floating device and what is it doing in the river? Installed this month, the 1,000-foot barrier is the latest development in Governor Greg Abbott's Operation Lone Star, a $4 billion border security plan. The barrier is about 4 to 6 feet tall. It's also equipped with underwater webbing, making it challenging for anyone attempting to swim beneath it. Lawmakers and advocates argue that the barrier poses a drowning risk to migrants. The Rio Grande is infamous for the danger it presents to migrants trying to reach the United States, claiming hundreds of lives, including a number of infants and children. The Department of Justice legal action is particularly noteworthy as it marks the agency's first attempt to directly fight Abbott's immigration law enforcement efforts. After the Department of Justice informed the governor of its intent to sue last week, Abbott responded with a letter claiming he is just as concerned about the well-being of migrants as the Biden administration, but adding that Biden's finger points in the wrong direction. Abbott wrote, "Neither of us wants to see another death in the Rio Grande River, yet your open border policies encourage migrants to risk their lives by crossing illegally through the water instead of safely and legally at a port of entry. Nobody drowns on a bridge." Despite Abbott taking aim at Biden for his supposedly relaxed border policies, there has been a decrease in the number of migrants caught illegally crossing the US-Mexico border after the Biden administration adopted a new, more stringent asylum policy in May. In June, the number of migrants apprehended by Border Patrol as they came into the US illegally dropped below 100,000. That is the lowest recorded level in 2 years.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott is now installing these circular saws right on the US-Mexico border in order to repel illegal immigrants. And if you look at it closely, these floating devices are very inhumane. Literal saws floating on the river. Let's take a look at this picture. This man right here took a picture with those floating devices. These right here are all laid across the Rio Grande River on the US-Mexico border. There's saws in between each one of these floating devices. And so far, these have already claimed the lives of 2 immigrants. Rest in peace, my boy.
There was outrage when Texas installed these large floating buoys along parts of the Rio Grande earlier this month to prevent border crossings. But critics say migrants could get stuck beneath and drown. And they say barbed wire placed along the river has led to injuries among migrants. The barriers are part of Republican Governor Greg Abbott's state border security initiative, Operation Lone Star. But detailed concerns about the operation's tactics are now coming from within the Texas Department of Public Safety, which is partially tasked with carrying out the plan. In an internal email dated July 3rd, a state trooper wrote, "I believe we have stepped over a line into the inhumane," listing examples. "We were given orders to push the people back into the water to go to Mexico." He said they refused the orders, adding there was the very real potential of exhausted people drowning. He also relayed a disturbing story of a 19-year-old pregnant woman he found stuck in razor wire along the border. She was having a miscarriage. Democratic Congressman Joaquin Castro is urging federal officials to intervene.
Anybody who pushes people back into the water and causes their drowning should be charged with murder.
Governor Abbott said his operation has issued no orders that would compromise migrants.
This floating death contraption is not from the new Saw movie.
I'd like to play a game with you.
It comes courtesy of pro-life Republican Governor Greg Abbott of Texas, who installed this bladed barrier in the Rio Grande and razor wire on the shoreline to slice and dice migrants trying to cross the border. Now, the Biden administration is trying to shut that shit down via lawsuit. And Abbott's response?
I thought President Biden would send me a thank you note for what Texas is doing to secure the border.
Oh, really? And what would that note say?
Dear Greg, thanks for nothing, you sick, murderous bastard. Regards, Dark Brandon.
First, Abbott says Biden has refused to secure the border, leaving him no choice but to turn the Rio Grande into a human sawmill. But Biden recently changed migration policy and built an app. Less catchy than Build the Wall, but it actually worked. Illegal border crossings are down 70%. Second, and I shit you not, Abbott cited Noah's Ark in court filings defending the bladed buoys. Although, to be fair, Noah might just be the perfect metaphor for Abbott. For when the people fled to his ark, desperate to survive, he slammed the door shut.